everyone, my name is Alyssa. I'm a data analyst at Distillery. Distillery is an applied data science company, and we primarily focus on advertising and marketing industries. However, our data is in demand because it can be applied to a lot of different uses. And we did partner with the Indiana University Kelley School of Business to do this analysis called Digital Vapor Trails. And it's an analysis that points to the potential of observed digital behaviors, which has been called Digital Vapor Trails, to nowcast business formation and growth at the regional level. Thank you. So this is the main point of our analysis, the main question. Does entrepreneurship audience concentration explain regional variation in startup and early stage business growth? To get there, we will evaluate, I'll go through distillery data and the audience concentration, and we'll evaluate the potential for this data source to see if it tracks with data traditionally used for academic and economic research. Great, so a bit about distillery. Every day, over 300 million people across the US are on their devices, whether it is their desktop, their smartphone, or even their tablet as they're traveling. And whether it's their smartphone, their desktop, or their tablet, each device emits digital signals. You can call them vapor trails, or breadcrumbs of user behavior, whether they're using apps, looking at a website, searching the web, sharing content, or relevant to this group, visiting a physical location. Every day, Distillery ingests over 160 billion data points from the data we collect, from roughly over 150 plus million devices for 300 plus million individuals. And so you can see that most individuals have more than one device. And what Distillery does really well is we ingest, clean, and structure the data that we collect. Great. So to organize the data for modeling and analytical purposes, we build out anonymous user profiles. So this faceless anonymous user is associated with granular time-stamped observed behavioral data history, as well as the observed behavioral history, the history from all linked devices, any first-party data, which has been siloed here, and all the raw data on the left is used to dynamically score audience assignments on the right. So when we look at this particular example of a user profile, we see that this user visited MLB.com and on probably a smartphone visited the MLB at Bat app, maybe bought something, you see a checkout pixel as well. And those historical actions, as well as some other features, allows this user to be scored into the model for MLB enthusiasts. For our research on entrepreneurship, we compared a custom-built behavioral audience to the baseline of the average internet user. And we'll revisit user profiles when we talk more about the behavioral audiences. Nowcasting is a term that was introduced to us through this analysis. It focuses on the present data. And digital data sources make it possible to measure behaviors that were otherwise outside of traditionally used data sources. At Distillery, we use observed behavioral data, which is different from self-reported data or surveys. So to capture data on a behavior, we craft a custom behavioral audience. And to build a model, we do research to find nuances in browsing behaviors that would answer our research prompt. So for this analysis, our prompt is, I want to analyze an audience of people who are starting a business, entrepreneurs basically. So we find a list of websites that we use as a proxy behavior and build a logistic regression model with websites as features. Okay. And there are 500,000 features in the model. Together, the top scoring features shown here on this slide are the sites that are most indicative of the behavior of people looking for entrepreneurial resources. The collection of features and their weights are used as a filter to find other users who act like the intended audience. Okay. So the individual profiles all have, are all unique. For this example, we see that the historical actions mixed with the linked historical actions of visiting different entrepreneurial resources like eMarketer or B-Plans, or as well as physical locations of WeWork, has helped to score this model, has helped to score this user profile into the entrepreneurship audience. All profiles are dynamically scored and assigned to audiences daily. So you see all our data is also time-stamped. So when this user profile begins exhibiting the behavior that, of one of our audiences, it gets scored into that audience. When it is no longer exhibiting that behavior, it is scored out of it. Right. We get even more granular with this data by overlaying a specific audience over the map of the US, highlighting the zip codes that have a positive index and where the audience is most likely to live. Okay. So areas where entrepreneurship concentration is high can be explained by tech hubs in California and North Carolina, as well as business opportunities in Utah and Colorado, and incentives in Vermont. I think the example in Vermont is particularly interesting. So you see that it's nearly the entire state that exhibits entrepreneurial behaviors. And it's even zip codes where there's nothing more than ski resorts, right? But when I looked into this, I did find that Vermont has a history of entrepreneurship and it currently has an incentive program where the state will pay you to move there and work remotely. Right. So the visualization shows us a daily snapshot of zip code level data. The daily snapshots allow us to track trends over time. We're also able to aggregate our data to the county level or the state level, which is useful to compare to other data sets. In this chart, it's a timeline of the entrepreneurship audience from February to June. And you would read this as San Francisco County, the line in blue, is consistently more likely than the national average to have a propensity for entrepreneurial behaviors. Nowcasting is important because we can see trends emerge in real time. We're consistently measuring behaviors and can make timely callouts. For example, Harrisonburg City, Virginia, the line in red, you see at the end of the spring, it is the home of James Madison University. And you see at the end of the spring semester, there's a steep decline in entrepreneurial behaviors online, suggesting that it's students who are driving that index in that region. Great. So that brings us back to our analysis here. Does the concentration of the Stillery custom-built behavioral audience for entrepreneurship explain regional variation in startup and early-stage business growth? To get to that answer, we first have to compare the Distillery data to other research methods. And in our analysis, we use the Kauffman Foundation Index on Entrepreneurship. And the Kauffman Foundation publishes an index with the most recent data from 2017. In the Kauffman Index, there are two categories, one for business, for startup formation activity, and the other for early business growth. And there's a distinction between the two, which we will return to. So the Kauffman Index is available for the top 40 metro areas in the US. Now, the distillery audience data we began collecting in January 2018, and we were able to aggregate that zip code data to the top 40 metro areas to match the Kauffman report. Okay. There are three sub-measures of the Kauffman Index as well. They're rate, share, and density. So rate captures the average employment growth of a cohort of startup businesses in their first 5 years of operation. And the report gives a stat, which you can either read as glass half full or half empty, of approximately 400,000 new employer businesses that have been created annually in the US. In recent years, around 45% survived their first 5 years of operation. The second is share, which looks at the percentage of companies 10 years old and younger that are scale-ups, which Kauffman defines as companies that are small and grow to employ at least 50 people in their first 10 years. While rate measures the average employment growth of a cohort of firms, share only focuses on firms that reach a certain scale. The third measure, while rate and share focus on employment, the third measure focuses on revenue. Density assesses the prevalence of high-growth private companies in an area, defined as those that achieve at least $2 million in revenue and at least 40% annualized growth over a 3-year period. Both researchers and entrepreneurs have suggested density as a key indicator of vibrancy in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Now, for our analysis, there is a critical assumption that we have to consider, and there's research on this cited in our paper. It states that general characteristics, including browsing behaviors of a region, are not expected to change significantly year to year. Therefore, the data that we collect today should be stable and aligned with years previous. There shouldn't be any drastic, unexplained changes to the characteristics of a region. There's the animation. Great. This is the meat of the analysis. Now, we did a correlation between the Kauffman 3 sub-measures of startup activity and entrepreneurial growth indexes and the distillery entrepreneurship audience. Overall, the correlations are not particularly strong. There's a lower correlation for share, which could possibly suggest companies of a certain size and business development are not seeking out entrepreneurial resources online. It's an area that we can focus on with further study. More interesting is the difference in the 2 types of entrepreneurial activity. So where startup formation is more businesses forming their organization and coming up with the idea of their business. Business growth has passed that stage, and the entrepreneurial growth has passed that stage, and with the strongest correlations for entrepreneurial growth, we can conclude that entrepreneurs in the growth phase of their new companies utilize web-based resources to a much greater extent. So the results show entrepreneurial digital behaviors can provide explanatory power and are candidates for nowcasting data sets. It's not surprising that when people are starting a business, it does show up in their browsing behaviors. The results also point to a potential for a response to better serve those in the very early stages of their business development. Great, so what comes next? With further study and development, we'll be able to dive deeper into this analysis. And the first point of that would be aligning the Nowcasting data to the reported data. So when the Kauffman report does catch up to the data that we have started collecting with our distillery behavioral audience, we can make further correlations. And we need a lot more data. So we're continuing to collect daily snapshots, and we'll reach a full year in early 2018. Also, we can consider a region's connectivity. And what I mean by that is that the Kauffman report doesn't distinguish between a business that's opening a food truck or opening a cloud computing company. And an area that we can develop further in this study is to consider that the more tech-friendly areas would be more readily available and have better access to entrepreneurial resources online. Great. So there are many other distillery audiences that show changes in time, that show changes in characteristics and trends over time from region to region. So I will open it up for comments and questions.